So we've been going through the five powers. Five powers are within the Lojong teachings, 7-point mind training. And it's a synthesis of practice for a single lifetime. Such a valuable way of just putting all the pieces together. And it's really about the skill of applying Dharma, which is nice because we have many practices. And this is how do we put them into place? How do we utilize them? How does it make sense in my daily life? The mind training teachings are just really designed for a busy lifestyle, for, the idea that everything I do can be Dharma. And we don't all get to live in a monastery for 20 years or in a cave. So how can we transform our life now? So within these five powers, it's basically the how. It's really sweet. It's the skills of how and the techniques. So the first one is really establishing a resolve. I'll just do a recap. I won't go teach them all again because we'll keep doing this. So a resolve to not waste this life, to really recognize the value that in this very lifetime right now, all the conditions are ripened for this path of awakening. And we develop that through our attention to the four thoughts that turn our mind to Dharma, which is just an accurate assessment of our current situation. To really know that, what if we really knew, not intellectually, but knew that in this very lifetime, I have access to complete liberation of all mental and emotional suffering, of freedom, of well-being, of the opportunity to benefit all. So we actually knew that. And also knew that it has taken an incredible amount of causes and conditions to come together. And I don't know how long I'll have it. I mean, that's the deal. Like, wow. I mean, we can intellectualize that. We can think about it. And you and I can know, hey, I may not be here tomorrow. But part of us thinks, yeah, I probably will. Well, if we knew, we may not, And so there's a meditation early on I used to reflect upon. I used to sit at the center in Long Beach. The idea of lighting a little candle in the window, a little flame outside. And that's my life, It's fragile. Might stay lit all night, maybe not. That used to help me. So this resolve comes from recognizing the value of this life and a resolve to not waste it, that this opportune physical form, more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel we gain, it's like the once. So hard to get, so easily destroyed, it's like a lightning flash in the sky. Contemplate this and you'll see that all worldly actions are but winnowed chaff. And night and day we must work to extract the essence of this life. And so establishing this resolve, from the moment I wake up, His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, bring this to mind, bring this to mind. And we actually can start before we go to sleep. What's important, set that intention, wake up with that. I have a little sticky note right there. And then the second one is familiarity. So developing the familiarity with my mind, with my habits, with my practices. And so how do we develop familiarity? We do things a lot. We sit with them, we feel them, we sit in the same posture. It's so valuable to sit in the same posture. It's so valuable to take some time to observe my mind, to get familiar with those tendencies. To be present is an incredible habit because it's so easy to be distracted. And the mind always wants to be distracted. What else are we going to do? What do you think he's cooking in that pot behind you? That little thing that was simmering. A little curiosity. Yeah, so the mind. So to become familiar with, to actually become familiar with my habits, my tendencies, to become familiar with my mind. But the piece here is also to become familiar with habits that are conducive for the path. So really become familiar with the healthy patterns and methods of meditation, of practices, of attitudes that are healthy and well, as well as being aware of the ones that aren't so. There's a lot of confusion around source of happiness and well-being. So what are these? But here they're really grounding on let's focus on the healthy habits, patterns. And so I look at that personally as waking up each day and having a routine. If we can have a routine, it's great. Mine starts the night before. I actually have a little ritual. I set my coffee pot, set the little timer, get it just so. Get ready for bed, do your prayers, get ready. Set that alarm. At this time, I'm going to get up. Gonna, visualize what I'm going to do. I have my little place set up in the morning. Little routine. And so it's much easier for the mind to come into that routine and develop that habit and take some time to reflect upon these thoughts, 4 thoughts. Day'll never come again. How do I want to live it? What's the karma I'm creating? And within those 4 thoughts is this really powerful thought, which we're going to bring up in the 5th point, 5th power. 3rd thought of the 4 thoughts we'll bring up in the 5th power, which is the 4th point of the 7 points. Man, we got it. It's crazy. Karma. We create our karma. Wow. That is exciting. I get to create my potentials. I get to participate actively in creating my future, my experience, the conditioning. I get to do that. Wow. So often it feels like I'm a prisoner of all my conditioning. I don't recognize that that is now giving me the opportunity to transform. And that's what mind train's all about, is taking the current condition and transforming into the path of awakening. And so having a little time to reflect upon, I'm about to embark upon a day that will never come again, and what I think, say, and do today is creating my future. I can cultivate merit and wisdom in everything that happens today. That's how I awaken. Merit, wisdom. Merit, bodhicitta, method, wisdom. Just seeing things as they are, recognizing who I am. It's an unfolding path. And everything that I'm going to experience today is that. And so this 3rd power is to really hold that seed of awakening and nurture it. That everything I get to do today waters the seed, the white seed of the path of awakening, of my Buddha potential, that everything is here to recognize it's there, to nurture it, to flourish. That adversity is an opportunity to grow. Good things are an opportunity to not get too attached and grow. Neutral things, well, let's transform those into meaningful things. 4th is the abandoning of misperception, the abandoning of this self-grasping, self-cherishing sense of self that is the core root of all my samsara. And that we talked a bit about, well, a great deal about that, I think, last time. And so all of these things, no matter whether I am a Zen Buddhist or a Theravada Buddhist or Pure Land Buddhist or Tibetan Buddhist or a Buddhist interested person, these are skills to bring to mind those particular teachings. I'm going to resolve to use this life I'm going to get familiar with my teachings. I'm going to get familiar with my practices. I'm going to utilize my experience in a way that nourishes this path of awakening. And all traditions have at their core the root problem is a misperception of self. So it doesn't matter. These skills fit with all those. And so that's why it's such a great synthesis. And so how can I start becoming familiar with the grasping of self that gives rise to all of my mental afflictions? You know, and that's to notice. We have to be mindful. So meditation's a piece in there too. So that's in the familiarity piece, number 2, really. As I've mentioned before, gom gyap, to meditate. Gom means to become familiar with. Tibetan sort of view of meditation. Which now brings us to fifth point. Fifth power. Fourth point. Which I think is often overlooked and in some traditions actually a bit frowned upon. But I think that's because of a misunderstanding around it. But prayer. In this text specifically, it's really about prayer that cultivates virtue. It's prayer that plants aspirations and intentions, that dedicates merit. And it's interesting. I had a phone call with someone who had set up a phone call. It was, in a therapeutic process, and had wanted me, spiritually, and asked, well, who do you pray to? If you're Buddhist, who you pray to? And I thought, well, maybe let's start with what's prayer mean to you, and why would we use it, and how's it helpful? And if we start thinking of prayer, maybe with the use of mantra, right? Mantras, pretty common. Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, and quite a few others. The word mantra, mantra means to protect the mind protection. So when I'm doing a mantra, I'm thinking, may all beings be free of suffering. I might be thinking of someone who's struggling. I want them to be well. I'm protecting my mind from non-virtuous thoughts, right? When I'm saying prayer, I'm hopefully not praying, boy, I hope that guy gets his. That's not the kind of prayer we're looking at here. But cultivating virtue, cultivating and growing and watering and nurturing the mind that we'd like to cultivate. So if we start thinking about prayer in this term of an actual method to cultivate the thoughts and attitudes that I would like to grow, well, wow. Neuroscience has that whole thing, right? Just as a single footprint doesn't make a path in the forest, a single thought does not make a pathway in the mind. To make a deep physical path, we must walk again and again. To make a deep mental path, we must think again and again the thoughts that we want to dominate our lives. Habitual ways of thinking. Have you noticed you have some habitual ways of thinking? Yeah. And a lot of that's not the ones I want, just for the record. It's been conditioned over time. I still have. I mean, there are sayings that I still will want to, just old comeback lines, from when I was a mechanic, somebody says this line, and it'll just pop up, because I've said them so many times. I saw the same joke lines from when I was an auto mechanic, like 28 years ago, and if I were in this shop, we'd have the same banter. It's great. Boss used to always tell me, man, you hear me? I hear you in my sleep. It's just, it's just these things, just, and they just come out. And so we have all this habitual way of thinking and thoughts that arise, and we notice when we meditate, they arise on their own. I'm not doing that. What if we started consciously watering the thoughts we want to grow? Well, prayer is a great opportunity for that. Loving kindness meditation, permanence, thoughts, kindness, compassion. Thoughts of impermanence, what if I knew, this day will come and go. How do I want to live it? So prayer in that sense, and one of my favorite quotes around prayer actually comes from a Christian, Soren Kierkegaard, who is praying to a deity, which is, we don't pray to influence God. We pray to change the nature of the one who prays. I think that's the deal right there. I am transforming my thoughts, my attitudes as I pray. So this fifth power is really unlocking the power of prayer and cultivating virtue and merit. So coming back to that other point is becoming familiar with. We can start becoming familiar with virtue. We can start becoming familiar with prayers and thoughts and attitudes that give rise to this path of awakening. Proactively. So many times people talk about being mindful as responding. What about proactively watering instead of always being on defense? No, I can start watering these thoughts. Because if we don't, we do play defense. And then so often, the time I practice Dharma is when I'm in pain. And one of the best times to practice Dharma is when you're not in pain, now I can go a little more deeply. And so proactively with prayer, with proactively thinking about the aspirations and cultivating the patience, cultivating, if we were to take a look at the 6 perfections, generosity, right? Ethics, patience, effort, concentration, wisdom. I can be proactively bringing to mind and having some prayer and thoughts around, may I be able to engage in this day that will never come again, upholding my bodhicitta motivation to the best of my ability. May that happen. May I dedicate my efforts for the benefit of all sentient beings. And as we do this, we are watering those potentials, but we're also cultivating virtue. We're cultivating merit. And this is often overlooked, is that wisdom alone doesn't do it. Meditation alone doesn't do it. You can be a pretty solid meditator and be a pretty miserable person, miserable inside. And we need to nurture that compassion. We need to nurture that loving kindness. We need to nurture that connection with others. We can nurture this experience so that we can fully make use of it. And so we need to create the conditions, back to karma, create the conditions that give rise to finding a good teacher, finding a nice environment, sustaining a path of awakening. Because as you may notice, it's fish going upstream, right? The vast amount of 7 billion other, just the humans out there, are pretty much unaware of even the idea of what it would be like to actually be free of suffering. Like, wow. I'll often start a talk like that if I'm giving a talk at a keynote. It freaks people out. I steal Tenzin Priyadarshini's, Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshini's talk. He says, what would it be like to be totally free of anxiety? To just be totally free of having any sense of being insecure or anxious? What would that be like? And I'll put that out there, people. People get pretty uncomfortable. Like, well, that wouldn't be human. That wouldn't be, I need that to, it's like, that's insecurity and tension and fear. It's based on misperception. Like, wow, that somebody could actually live like that? And it seems so far away. And then you say, well, have you ever been with that anxiety? Yeah. Well, why not just be like that more? We've been there. We've done it. It's not so unobtainable. We've had moments. How about more moments? Very few are just so caught up in the struggle of, you know, our human experience. And so there's this precious few. So we need to water and nurture this gift, the rare and precious human rebirth, which is not all humans. It's a small, tiny fraction of humans that have the resources, that have the all the faculties and the desire and the interest and the effort. I mean, all those pieces and teachings that are available and access. Very few. So we want to nurture that. So prayer becomes this incredible opportunity to keep watering the conditions. And an aspirational prayers, may I always be surrounded by good teachers. May I always meet with my teachers again. And we create that karmic connection. So we're creating that karma. And we want to keep doing that. As I'm creating the conditioning for my future. And so my habits and my tendencies are reinforced by what I think, do, and say. So I need the support of a group to help me with that. It's pretty hard to be that fish alone swimming upstream. And I also need to connect my mind with these aspirations, with these paths. And so walking down a street, one practice might just be fully present in appearance and walking down the street, watching things arise. It's a good practice. I'm practicing Dharma. Another practice just might be saying some prayers for I know someone who's going in the hospital and struggling, having that to mind. It's protecting my mind. These 5 powers can apply to walking down the street in many ways. And then some people get bored. I don't know if you've ever been bored, but yeah, some people get bored. We have to wait. Well, I don't have to wait. I can cultivate virtue and merit. I can think of some people that I know have asked for some prayers. I can say some prayers for them. Cultivating virtue. Or I can shift into noticing how I grasp onto, this or that. Now I'm practicing. Abandon it. So really valuable practices that can be applied, especially if you have to wait in line for something. So these 5 powers then become a skillful method to incorporate this path of awakening, of recognizing the incredible value of this opportunity, and then bringing into all my activities the path of awakening, which isn't more complicated than merit and wisdom. It just seems that way a lot. Because it's hard to have a virtuous mindset when I'm clinging to how I think things should be, or I'm uncomfortable in some way. And so I want to tie this to this wonderful little practice. We've been doing a little bit on the 7-point. This is within the 7-point mind training, within the 2nd point on this relative bodhicitta, is this practice of 3 objects, 3 poison, 3 roots of virtue, which really ties things together, I think, nicely for everything we're kind of talking about. These are skills to do, skillful methods to undo the habits, the tendencies, the afflictions, the misperceptions that keep me in prison, that cause my mental and emotional suffering. And so these 3 objects, 3 objects are objects that arise that are pleasurable, that I like, ones I don't like, adverse to, and neutral. So everything we experience falls into these categories. But I see someone, or I see something, or I smell some food, or I like that, don't like that. Nah, I don't really care, I don't even notice that much. But they give rise, my experience of them. Now I'm an observer and experience of these things. 3 roots of samsara: ignorance, attachment, and aversion. So they give rise. Now I give rise. I like that. I don't like that. Really could care less about that. There's a lot of I in this. And samsara is now fully born. And so I can start to notice my attachment to something, my aversion to something, my anger towards something, my anxiety towards something, my indifference towards something. And I can start to notice how, wow, how quickly I can get hooked one way or another, and how real everything seems. You know, I can think of someone and I can think, wow, they're really like this. Like maybe it's someone I don't like, and maybe they're really not doing this thing right. Or there's somebody I really like and I couldn't live without them. Well, either way, that's a lot of me there. And the idea is that as these objects arise, I can see the grasping, the sense of self arise. And I can see how it leads to anxiety and fear. I may get what I want, I may not get what I want. Something might go my way. And all of that struggle that is binding me to samsara, and I can transform that into virtue. As I am being attached to this, really feeling like I need it, so are all others. They all suffer from this. And then the aspiration, may they be free of the suffering I'm experiencing. I've just taken an experience and transformed it into a virtue of really thinking about others and their struggles and identifying with that. And maybe lessening my own attachment to it in the moment. Same applies to neutral. Man, isn't it interesting that I'm so indifferent about something that used to matter to me? How indifferent do we get about things that used to matter a lot? And even people used to matter a lot. I don't really care that much about them. Wow. What if I become indifferent and don't recognize all of the amazing causes and conditions that gave rise to whatever's cooking in that pot behind the screen? Not that I'm thinking about that much, but the food that we eat and all the conditions and the fascinating things that give rise to the world that we get to live in, where we have water and it nourishes our body, and how the system works. And we're not even interested, mundane, because I'm too distracted. All others suffer like this. Wouldn't it be nice if they were free? People caught up in anger, attachment, in that angry way, aversion. I notice when I'm like that, I can cultivate the thought of virtue. May others be free of this suffering that I have. And so what's happening in this 3 objects, 3 roots, 3 poisons, 3 roots of virtue, is that whenever I'm catching myself grasping to myself, grasping with attachment or aversion or all that, I'm recognizing the binds of the prison I'm in. Rather than just being caught up in that, I can recognize that all these other people that I struggle with are struggling just like me. May they be free. And so the mind has this, instead of being caught up and reifying samsara, I'm actually having an opportunity to loosen things and cultivate merit and virtuous mind. And so prayer and virtue, thoughts that arise in my mind, don't always need to be a prayer to something. but a cultivation of virtuous thoughts and attitudes, such as, may you be well, may you be healthy. It's a virtue, that's a prayer. And then fundamentally, at the end of these 5 powers, or within the totality of the 5 powers, it's that our life is our prayer. How I'm living my life, how I'm experiencing you, is the result of the imprints I'm putting in my mind stream, what I'm cultivating in my actions, body, speech, and mind. And so I can tie those together with some prayer. So I'll just pause there for a moment. I know we have people online want to see if anyone had any questions or thoughts around that. And if you're online, you can, I think there's a raise your hand button. And either way, it gives me a chance to have a sip of water. Not that I'm attached to it, but if I am, may all others be free of that attachment. Okay, let's see, one raised their hands. So for me, I have found that these 5 powers transcend Buddhism. They're just a pretty healthy way of living. You know, if you're a Christian, well, if you're to wake up and, hey, I don't want to waste this life. I want to become familiar with the tools and practices of, that are healthy for me in my journey. I want to make the white seed cultivate the highest potentials I have in this lifetime. And I want to eliminate the self-grasping that has me, create sins or things that go against my nature, and then prayer fits, right? Human, not Buddhist, not Christian, not. Here's a day that will never come again in my life. How do I want to live it? What are the habits and attitudes that nurture well-being and a meaningful life for me? The third thought is what are the qualities and potentials that I have in my life that I want to cultivate? And how can I use the experiences I'm having to cultivate that? Is there anything in my life that doesn't help me be a better person? What part of my ego or self-grasping prevents me from being the person I really want to be? Because there's a lot of confusion there. People confuse habits and desires with what I really want. I really want inner peace, well-being. I want to be a good father. I want to be. Desires and habits prevent me from doing the things I know I'll feel good about because I'm chasing things that'll make me feel good. And then the fifth one, then again, prayer, virtuous thoughts. Maybe I don't believe in any of that, but I can understand the interdependence and the connection that I have with all of you and all the animals, and the fact that if I'm having any food at all, there's a lot of people and things that made that available. The fact that I can drive safely on a road in my car because we're all agreeing to stop and somebody put a stop sign there, and that we really do care about our children and the world we live in. Dad wouldn't have anything without you. It's really good that you're healthy and well so that I can be healthy and well. And so these 5 powers, they fit within any construct because they're skills that really allow us to bring to mind the meaning of our life, the fundamental path, and water and nurture that and live in accordance with it to our development. So very skillful things. It's a way of being in the world that reinforces the highest potentials of your life. So I really find them quite valuable. And so they're scalable. Tibetan Buddhist, bodhicitta, that's what I'm not going to forget, and the familiarity of those practices. Yeah. But I think what is overlooked so often, as I've mentioned, is prayer. Because that's where we have so much more influence that goes untapped. What if we were to think about the things that we want to grow and nurture? So, for example, taking a little time to think about, in my case, my wife before I see her and bringing to mind her good qualities. On purpose, thinking about it consciously before I see her, what I value about her. And then I see her. That's a different mindset than if I didn't do that. Coworker, a person I'm struggling with. What if I took time to think about how do I want to see them consciously? So in other words, I get to water and nurture the attitudes and thoughts on purpose before these things happen and they can arise. Yes.
It's just reflecting on what you're saying regarding just planting those positive seeds. I think that they're prior to really trying it and finding that it works. I think there was a real sense of inauthenticity when trying to just bring positive qualities to mind about somebody that perhaps you didn't have, you weren't having loving or positive thoughts about. And that's something that I've realized is so misleading. And it's almost like this lie that you keep telling yourself that since this is kind of like my gut impression of this person, to think positively. Let's say it's just negative. Right. Just make it simple. It's like, oh, I just don't like them. They always do this annoying thing. They frustrate me. But then saying, oh, well, I could, put on these rose-colored glasses and put them into some sort of like better light. But that's not real me. That's not how I really think. But until I tried it a lot and found that it worked, I wouldn't have believed it, to be quite fair and honest. And it's not until I've been doing it for a number of years in a number of different situations with a number of different people that I can say that has transformed. It's extremely powerful. It's extreme. If you want to live a better life, if you start simply just thinking more positive thoughts about these people that you interact with, you're not being inauthentic any more than you're being authentic by thinking that they're jerks. Mm-hmm. But do you want to live a life where you're surrounded by people that bring you happiness and that you wish happiness upon? Or around a bunch of jerks? Mm-hmm. It's just a real simple question. And I think that most people say, well, of course I don't want to be surrounded by jerks. Yeah. But we've been planting, we're sowing the seeds all the time to be surrounded by jerks. Right. And we think we're just being authentic. Oh, because I've always thought that this guy was a jerk. Then to be me, I have to continue to do that. Mm-hmm. And it's just so funny looking back on it, as you say, it's like, it's happened. I've done it because I've been told to do it. But it's funny because it actually works.
Right. And, the key point there you're making is this idea of inauthenticity. Yeah. Which is actually my misperception thinks right. This is the way it is, right? It's the point you're making. Yeah.
They're both misperceptions.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to misperceive anything, you might as well misperceive it for
But can you see their healthy qualities in a clear way?
Right.
In which case, just like me, they are struggling with mental things, just like me. What am I paying attention to?
I think there was an initial leap of faith.
Right.
Because I didn't see them authentically. Yeah. I had to almost superimpose thoughts of loving kindness on someone that I didn't have those thoughts for. Yeah. It wasn't as skillful as many teachers say, focus on this little one thing. I don't think. It's hard to say. Some people I did try to see one little good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you crack the door open, like once you crack the door open, the dog can run through it, right?
Right. Yeah.
The door's latched shut and they're, just nasty.
Yeah.
But once you crack that door open, you can get that little nuzzle through and positive qualities then can start flowing. But you have to crack the door. Just find something. Maybe, they just have they have nice eyes, or they have, a great laugh, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But there's a little, just the willingness to have your mind changed.
That's the willingness and the action.
And action, yeah. The willingness to be wrong about your perception. I think that's something else that comes in. There's a lot of pride. You want to be right, and you almost want to make them bad, so you can continue to be right about them being bad. It's horrible to say that out loud, but that's what I've done.
Yeah, well, it's common, right? That we will even look to see the negative things or the things that they've done to verify our own value. Oh, yeah, see, there they are. Yeah. And then sometimes you almost want them to fail.
Yep. Absolutely.
That'll prove that doesn't work. So that's I think everybody can relate to that. And I want to tap into something that you hit on, which is we're creating the karma to have jerks in our lives. As we label them jerks and tell people are jerks and reify the jerks. And the way to not have jerks in your life is to respond to them differently, which is what you're saying. And so recognizing that I'm experiencing them as a jerk out of my confusion, but they're offering me an opportunity to cultivate merit and wisdom. And if I start treating them with compassion, which might be with boundaries and stuff, but not the ill will, as you're pointing out, I'm going to have a lot less jerks in my life because I'm creating different imprints so that when people that I once would have experienced as a jerk, I don't have that feeling arise anymore. And therein lies what you're sharing is the way to eliminate jerks is not to call them jerks and send them away. It's to recognize that I'm experiencing them as a jerk. And to transform that opportunity. So well done there. Yeah.
A lot of failure, a lot of a lot of fear, and being wrong about people because I've put a lot of energy into making people bad, and it's taken a lot of I would say a lot of courage to admit that actually I've been very wrong and I've caused a lot of pain for myself and for others through that process over and over again. But then the nice thing is that we do get the opportunity in every breath to start again, and start again. And I think that's where meditation, that's that little familiarizing that you're talking about. Familiarize your mind with your breath. Your mind is run off again, thinking about what food in the crock pot, and you could just come back. And you can be thinking somebody's been a jerk your whole life, and you could just come back. You can make them, like you said, with boundaries, and you can make them just maybe bring them to the neutral territory, and then actually even have a lot of love.
Yeah. Recognizing that just like me, they're struggling.
Yeah.
So I got a little check question here. My mom reminds me of a positive default thought. Always assume positive intent on the part of the other person. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. The thing I like to remember is everyone is just like me doing the best they can. But also what they're doing makes sense to them. which is fascinating because it makes no sense to me sometimes. But based on how they were raised, the experiences they've had in their lives, the struggles, the challenges, they're trying to find happiness just like me and try and get their needs met. So they're intent. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Shelley. Yeah, so we are at our concluding time. And I think it's a good discussion. I think it's, if we understand prayer, we might be praying to archetypes and qualities that we want to nurture, Buddha, medicine Buddha, compassion, so forth. And but all those are done to water and nurture those qualities within us. And back to your main point again is we're praying to change the nature of the one who prays. Yeah, and that's beautiful. So let us dedicate the merit and wisdom that we have accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes. Let us dedicate this for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be free of suffering, find their liberation. May we be able to use the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes to purify our own minds, to help us incorporate these 5 powers into our daily lives, to unlock the full potential and recognize our Buddha nature so that we can truly be a benefit to all sentient beings. And may we also dedicate the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes to the long life of all spiritual teachers of all spiritual traditions, authentically teaching the path of awakening. May they live long, may their teachings flourish, and may their students prosper.